It was 1944, somewhere in the South Pacific, amid the roar of waves and the endless sky. Sergeant Jack "Hawk" Harrison, a Marine with a reputation for brilliance and stubbornness, had grown frustrated with the standard aircraft guns issued to his squadron. Every mission felt like a dance with death, bullets often missing their marks, enemy planes slipping through like shadows. Jack was obsessed. Not with medals, not with glory, but with perfection. He studied every gun, every mounting system, every aircraft maneuver, determined to create something that could turn the tide of aerial combat in favor of the Allies. Standard Browning M2s, heavy and cumbersome, jammed too often under continuous fire. Their rate of fire was respectable, but in the chaos of dogfights, that wasn't enough. Japanese Zero fighters, agile and fast, exploited every flaw, darting in and out of anti-aircraft fire, leaving pilots frustrated and exposed. Jack's peers called him crazy for even considering a modification, but in his mind, the numbers told a clear story. One Marine could make a difference, if only the gun could be perfected. Hunched over a cluttered bench in the hangar, Jack tinkered with springs, belts, and barrels. He had sketches everywhere, a journal filled with frantic notes, diagrams of recoil patterns, timing mechanisms. Every plane that returned from combat brought new observations, each one feeding his obsessive calculations. It was late one night when he had the breakthrough. By rearranging the feed system and modifying the cooling vents, he could double the rate of fire without risking the barrel overheating. His hands were trembling, not from fear, but from sheer anticipation. The first test flight was nerve-wracking. Jack climbed into a war-weary Corsair, its engine thrumming like a heartbeat in his chest. The modified gun, mounted beneath the wing, hummed to life with a menacing growl. He released a short burst. The rounds tore through the sky, precise and unrelenting. Jack knew in that instant he had created something lethal. The gun was no longer just a tool, it was an extension of his will, capable of killing 20 enemy planes a minute if wielded correctly. News of Jack's insane modification spread quickly. Fellow pilots, initially skeptical, were soon clamoring to test his creation. In the mess halls and briefing rooms, whispers grew louder. A single Marine, armed with this gun, could change the game. Yet with every burst of admiration came a shadow of danger. Such power demanded skill, and mistakes could be deadly. Jack welcomed the challenge. He thrived under pressure. On a humid morning over the Solomon Islands, Jack took off for his first real combat test. Enemy formations loomed on the horizon, unaware of the storm approaching. He dove, heart hammering, eyes locked on his target. The gun roared, a sound that would haunt Japanese pilots for months. In less than a minute, multiple planes erupted in fire, spiraling to the ocean below. Jack's fellow Marines watched in awe from above. The legend of the insane gun was born in the heat of battle. It wasn't just the physical damage that Jack's modification caused. Enemy pilots began to fear the skies themselves. Rumors spread of a gun so fast, so precise, it could tear an entire squadron apart in moments. Morale for the Japanese began to crack. Jack, always meticulous, used this psychological advantage. His attacks were unpredictable, calculated, each maneuver designed to maximize terror. In warfare, sometimes fear was the deadliest weapon of all. Behind the glory of battle was relentless maintenance. Jack spent hours inspecting every bolt, every barrel, every trigger mechanism. A single misfire could spell disaster. Fellow pilots complained he spent too much time in the hangar, but Jack only smiled. "This isn't just a gun," he said quietly. "It's the difference between life and death for everyone up there." His obsession, bordering on mania, was precisely what made him invaluable. Not all victories come without cost. Jack had few friends outside his squadron. His family letters sat unread in his locker, dust gathering on the edges. Nights were restless, haunted by the echoes of exploding planes and the faces of those who didn't make it. Yet every time he climbed into the cockpit, he pushed the guilt aside. The gun demanded perfection, and perfection demanded sacrifice. By late 1944, Jack Harrison's modification had become legendary. Pilots called it the machine that could kill 20 a minute, and it changed the dynamics of aerial warfare in the Pacific. More than a tool, it symbolized the ingenuity and obsession that could alter the course of history. And though Jack's story was told in whispers and war reports, Those who had flown alongside him knew the truth. In his hands, the skies themselves were no longer safe, and the war was never quite the same again. By early 1945, Japanese forces had begun to recognize the pattern. Rumors of Hawk's gun spread through intercepted communications and whispered among pilots. Many considered it a ghost story, impossible for one man to wreak such havoc. Yet Jack's precision left no doubt. Entire formations avoided sectors he patrolled, and intelligence reports confirmed the losses. The enemy's respect and fear grew, but so did their determination. Jack was about to face a challenge unlike any before. Jack volunteered for night sorties, an unusual choice that others avoided. The darkness added a new layer of danger. Navigation was tricky, and enemy anti-aircraft fire could come from any shadow. But Jack thrived. Using his modification's rapid-fire capabilities, he illuminated the night sky with bursts of tracer rounds, turning stealth into spectacle. Japanese pilots, unprepared for such ferocity after sundown, often panicked and crashed. Each mission only deepened his legend. Not every sortie went smoothly. One afternoon, a Japanese ace locked onto Jack's Corsair, matching him maneuver for maneuver. Bullets tore through the wings, sparks flying, engines sputtering. Jack's heart raced, but his hands were steady. He unleashed a short, controlled burst, the modified gun's tempo unmatched. The enemy plane spiraled down into the ocean, leaving Jack shaken but alive. These near-death experiences became routine, yet they fueled his obsession further. Back in the hangar, mechanics who once scoffed now watched in quiet awe as Jack meticulously cleaned his gun. Every nut, every spring, every barrel polished and calibrated. "They say it's insane," one mechanic muttered, "but if anyone can make it work, it's him." Jack didn't respond. His mind was already calculating the next modification, the next mission, the next kill. Obsession and brilliance were inseparable in his world. Amid the chaos, letters from home occasionally arrived. Jack read them quickly, the words barely registering. His mother's worry, his sister's jokes, they were relics of a life paused. Jack folded each letter carefully, returning them to his locker. The war was all-consuming. The gun, the sky, the enemy, these were the constants that defined him now. Every mission was a heartbeat, every burst of fire a pulse of survival. Japanese forces adapted. They started using decoy formations, night patrols, and coordinated ambushes to neutralize Jack's firepower. The game had changed. The stakes were higher. Jack noticed the patterns immediately. He altered his approach, mixing aggressive dives with sudden retreats, exploiting every flaw. The gun, now an extension of his mind, responded flawlessly. A symphony of lead and precision. Stories of Jack's exploits reached naval headquarters. Official reports documented the destruction, but oral tales among Marines painted him almost as a myth. Pilots swapped stories in hushed tones. 20 in a minute, Hawk's ghost, the Corsair that never misses. Jack, however, remained focused. Fame was irrelevant. Only results mattered. Each sortie, each burst, each enemy plane downed, validated the countless nights spent perfecting his weapon. Across the Pacific, Japanese pilots whispered the name Hawk with fear. Training manuals were updated with accounts of his gun's speed, its near-unerring accuracy. Some pilots refused to fly over certain sectors. Others flew with trembling hands, hoping to survive encounters. Jack never knew the names of these men, but their reactions, panic, hesitation, terror, were proof enough that his creation was more than a machine. It was a psychological weapon. Spring 1945 brought Jack to the Philippines. The enemy had massed, aware that one Marine could no longer be ignored. Hundreds of aircraft coordinated attacks, and seasoned aces awaited. Jack climbed into his Corsair, the modified gun humming like a heartbeat. He knew this might be his most dangerous mission yet. The sky opened into chaos, tracers crisscrossing, engines roaring, smoke trailing. His hands danced over the triggers, each burst a deadly punctuation. Survival required perfection, and Jack had learned to deliver. By mid-1945, the Pacific theater had become a storm of fire and smoke. Jack's Corsair, already legendary, now faced coordinated enemy tactics designed specifically to neutralize him. Multiple enemy squadrons launched simultaneous attacks, trying to overwhelm his speed and precision. Jack's modified gun hummed with lethal intent. Each burst shredded enemy formations, forcing them to break apart mid-air. The sky was no longer just a battlefield, it was a chessboard, and Jack moved with unmatched cunning, calculating every maneuver, every lead, every shot. Japanese pilots began flying in panic, even when Jack wasn't near. His reputation had become a weapon of its own. Reports of a single Corsair obliterating squadrons circulated through intelligence channels. Jack noticed the effect. Enemy formations hesitated, maneuvered poorly, and sometimes abandoned missions entirely. It was psychological warfare in its purest form, his obsession with perfection now amplified by fear alone. Back at the hangar, Jack's routine had become ritualistic. Every bolt, every spring, every feed mechanism had to be flawless. Any imperfection could cost lives. Mechanics whispered about the machine whisperer as Jack worked silently, hands blackened with grease. He was meticulous, almost fanatical. The gun was no longer just a tool, it was an extension of his mind, and the war depended on his obsession. In one harrowing mission, Jack faced an enemy ace who had studied his tactics. The duel stretched over the Coral Islands, bullets tearing through the air with deafening crackles. Jack dove, rolled, and fired with split-second timing. The modified gun spat rounds in a relentless torrent, precise as a scalpel. The enemy plane spiraled into the ocean, and Jack barely had time to adjust for the next wave of attackers. Each close call sharpened his instincts, pushing him further into the edge between genius and obsession. Letters from home arrived sporadically, untouched for weeks. Jack read them in fragments, the words floating past as the war consumed him. Family faces blurred, replaced by enemy planes and tracer lines in the sky. Haunted by memories of friends lost in combat, Jack found solace only in his Corsair and the gun he had perfected. Each mission was a dialogue with ghosts, both the living and the dead, each pull of the trigger a grim conversation with mortality. Enemy commanders began analyzing Jack's patterns, trying to find weaknesses. Each sortie became a game of wits, a high-speed test of perception, anticipation, and split-second decision-making. Jack adapted instantly, blending aggressive strafing runs with unexpected dives and unpredictable retreats. His gun's modified rate of fire allowed him to outpace enemy reactions, making him both a killer and a tactical enigma. The intensity of battle began to weigh on Jack. Dreams of endless sky and tracers haunted his sleep. Every misfire, every plane lost to a moment's hesitation, gnawed at him. Yet when he climbed into the cockpit, the fear transformed into focus. Each burst of fire, each maneuver, became a controlled rhythm. Jack was no longer just a Marine, he was a living instrument of war, finely tuned to the tempo of destruction. Japanese forces began deploying kamikaze tactics, desperate attempts to counter Jack's dominance. Entire squadrons trained to anticipate his attack vectors, attempting to lure him into traps. Jack's instincts, honed over countless missions, proved sharper. He dodged, weaved, and fired with uncanny accuracy. Yet the escalation meant the stakes were higher than ever. Any mistake could be fatal. The game of cat and mouse reached new, terrifying heights. Stories of Jack's exploits reached beyond the Pacific. Newspapers, letters, and whispers painted him as a mythic figure, a single Marine capable of annihilating squadrons with a machine gun he had insanely modified. Yet Jack remained detached. To him, the myth was irrelevant. The gun, the Corsair, and the skies were his only truths. Each sortie was another data point, another opportunity to perfect the machine and its deadly choreography. Rarely, Jack paused to reflect. The ocean stretched endlessly below him, a mirror of sky above. Moments of quiet were brief, swallowed quickly by the roar of engines and the demand of battle. He wondered if this obsession would ever end, or if he had already become inseparable from the machine, from the gun, from the relentless rhythm of the skies. There was no answer, only the hum of the modified barrels and the endless horizon of war. As Allied forces pushed closer to Japan, Jack found himself at the forefront of increasingly dangerous missions. He faced new aircraft, newer tactics, and more desperate enemies, all aware that the insane gun could obliterate them. Jack's skill, intuition, and mechanical genius were tested to their limits. The sky had become both canvas and battlefield, and he painted with lethal precision, every burst of fire a signature of obsession, innovation, and survival. By mid-1945, Allied forces were closing in on Japanese-held islands. Jack's Corsair led daring strikes deep into enemy territory. Each mission was a gauntlet, enemy fighters desperate to take down the Marine who had become a living nightmare in the skies. Jack's gun roared with unrelenting fury. Enemy planes fell in rapid succession, some barely visible before they were gone. Each successful sortie cemented his reputation, yet the danger grew exponentially. Intelligence reported a squadron of veteran Japanese aces waiting for him. They had studied his tactics, analyzed every known maneuver, hoping to trap the man behind the gun. Jack remained calm. He knew the key was unpredictability. Each maneuver was precise, each burst calculated. The modified gun spat rounds faster than any human eye could follow, leaving his adversaries scrambling and confused. As the enemy grew desperate, kamikaze tactics became a constant danger. Suicide planes dove at Jack's Corsair with terrifying speed. Jack's reflexes, honed over hundreds of sorties, were unmatched. He fired in rapid succession, each round finding its mark. Explosions lit the horizon, orange and red against the blue sky, while he maneuvered with deadly grace, surviving impossible odds. In the quiet moments between missions, Jack poured himself into the gun's maintenance. Every spring, every feed mechanism, every barrel was perfected with obsessive precision. Mechanics whispered in awe and fear. Jack was no longer just a Marine, he was part man, part machine, and his obsession had reached a point where it bordered on obsession-driven genius. Amid the intensity, Jack's mind was haunted by fallen friends. Faces of Marines lost in the Pacific flickered behind his eyes. Each death sharpened his resolve, driving him to ensure that no more lives would be lost due to his gun's imperfection. Each burst in combat was both vengeance and devotion, a tribute to the men who would never fly again. Enemy commanders devised complex formations, hoping to finally trap him. Jack studied every approach, predicting their moves with almost supernatural precision. His gun became an extension of his mind. Bursts of fire were timed to perfection. Enemy planes shredded before they could respond. Allies watched in awe as Jack turned impossible odds into decisive victories. With every mission, Jack felt the line between obsession and madness blur. Sleep was scarce. The roar of the Corsair and the hum of the gun haunted him even on solid ground. Yet in the air he was more alive than ever. The gun's fire, the enemy's panic, the endless blue horizon, this was his reality, and he embraced it fully, walking the razor's edge between brilliance and danger. Japanese forces launched a final coordinated assault to eliminate Jack. Multiple squadrons converged, planning to overwhelm him with sheer numbers. Jack dove into the heart of the attack. His gun roared, bullets tearing through formations, engines smoking, and planes spiraling. The sky became chaos incarnate, yet Jack moved with unmatched control, turning desperation into triumph. By the end of the Pacific campaign, Jack Harrison had become a legend. Reports detailed impossible kill ratios, rapid-fire precision, and a single Marine whose obsession and genius reshaped aerial warfare. Allies revered him, enemies feared him, and the skies themselves seemed to remember his name. Yet Jack remained focused, already planning the next modification, the next sortie, the next test of perfection. After the war, Jack's modified gun became the stuff of legend. Pilots told stories of the Marine who could kill 20 planes a minute, whose precision and obsession blurred the line between man and machine. Jack himself faded into the background, quietly repairing aircraft, mentoring younger pilots, always haunted by the hum of the barrels and the roar of the Corsair. His legacy was not medals or fame, it was fear, respect in a sky forever changed by a Marine who refused to settle for anything less than perfection.